Welcome to another episode of The Warm Up. We have Dr. Denise Knowles here, the Do Over Coach. And she's going to be talking to us about a mother's cry, unraveling the pain of family ties. So, as of late, I've seen a lot of people express that they have unresolved trauma with their family members. Maybe it's their mother, maybe it's their father. But today, for the sake of today's conversation, we are going to talk about motherhood, more so specifically to not only your own motherhood, but your mother and the trauma you faced as a child and how you overcame it. So, my first question to you is just in a brief description, what are some of the traumas you faced as a child?
Um, domestic violence. Domestic violence. Um, being made responsible for an adult, and I'm being a child. Um, just violence in general. My mom was a fighter. Um, I had stability because my grandparents were always the rescuers. But I also was bullied. I always had to go where my mom went. My brothers always had the option to stay with my grandparents. So when my mom moved to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, because she married my stepfather, I went too. And so they had friends that were domestic violence groups. Like it was two particular couple friends that they had, and both it was violent. And one couple, they had three children, and the only time I felt protected was if the oldest daughter was around, because the middle girl and the youngest was a boy, and he would punch me and all of these things, but I didn't have protection. I have my big brothers.
How old were you when all this was happening?
I was about 8. I remember I was in the 3rd grade when we moved to Clarksville, and so I
Okay.
was about 8 years old. And also, um, my stepfather was the first one to give me a French kiss. Yes. Um, what was crazy was he knew if I told my mom, and I knew too, that she would kill him. I knew. That's why I never told my mom, because I knew she would kill. She'd already shot him once. And as soon as he kissed me, it was like a ghost came over him, because he knew if I were to tell my mom, she would kill him. And I was more afraid of my mama getting arrested and being taken away from me than I was him ever doing it again. He never did anything else. He never touched me, never disrespected, nothing. He never did anything else. Not taken away from that being wrong, but he never looked at me sideways, nothing.
And all this was at 8 years old.
Mhm.
And,
Eight
besides,
was a big year for me. I had a lot going on at 8 and 9.
yeah, I heard you, outside of this interview or before we got on this interview, you kind of talked about driving and having to
Mhm.
drive your mother to the hospital. Could you go into detail about that?
So, born and raised in Dixon County, you either learned how to drive on a lawnmower, or just because it was, the country, you you would get keys, and a grandparent or somebody say, "Run down to the store and get this, that, and the other." When I would go to the store, they knew I was coming in for a pack of Cool 100. I mean, that's the kind of relationship that it was. I didn't need any ID, nothing like that. um, and so what would happen is, on those moments, um, my mom experienced traumatic trauma to her body, physically. My mom was raped by her brother-in-law as a kid. This all happened before I was born. So that's why often when I speak about my life and the beginning of my life, I share with people that I was born from a wounded womb. Um, Also, my mom became a mother the day after she turned 17. So she had my oldest brother when she was a teenager. 2 years later, she had my brother right above me. 2 years after that, she had me. Um, and so she experienced trauma. One of the biggest traumas, my mom's first love was singing. She had a beautiful voice, and she had a freak accident where she was running in the rain to get up on my grandparents' porch, and she slid through a glass screen door, which caused her to have a severed artery in her throat. And back then, there was no clamps, there was no life flight, so the doctor literally straddled her chest and had his hands inside her throat from Dixon County to Nashville, where Baptist Hospital was. That's a 45-minute drive. So, um, the birth canal that I came through, there was a lot of trauma and hurt. And so, my mom didn't become an addict, I would say, as choice, but because she experienced so much trauma physically, it ignites trauma mentally and emotionally. So back then, it's pain medicine, pain medicine, pain medicine, pain medicine, pain medicine until it wasn't. And she would feel pain, but it was also her body saying, I need this, I need this, I need this. So on the times when she would be in pain, either I would drive to Nashville to the ER and my big brother would drive back home, or vice versa. And so again, back then traffic was nothing like it is today. um, but it wasn't odd, not for me. It wasn't, not for our household,
Mhm. And
because
so,
it was all about the obligation of taking care of family.
being that you took care of your mother for so long, at what point in your childhood do you feel like, okay, I had a moment to breathe just for me?
Well, I mean, don't get I still had a childhood. I played sports. I love to roller skate, but if it came down to me making it to my basketball game and my mom not feeling well, my basketball games or my sports were always overridden. So,
Did she
but
ever come to any basketball games? Not one.
no, my parents, they didn't. I think I recall maybe a track and field when I was a little kid, but when I started getting older and going to more of the structured sports, I the biggest event that I remember both of my parents being present at was my senior night when I was a cheerleader, and the fact that they was cussing each other out in front of the whole county and football field, and they were both asked to leave. So
Mm. How did that make you feel
I don't
in
think
that
I
moment?
thought about it at the time. I don't think I ever yearned for them to be there, because I think the focus was on friends more so. So I don't think I ever really desired or even thought about them, because I started playing softball. I think I was in the second grade. So I just never thought about them being there. Now when I became a junior pro cheerleader, I do remember my mom coming to the game. I also remember one homecoming when I was a queen attendant, and you know how little boys are. The little boys were making fun of my dress, and my daddy came across that field, baby, with some hot gin in his pocket, and he cussed them little boys out so bad that they was in tears. So I do, you know, sporadically like that, but as I got older, it wasn't really very many games.
Okay. Is, being in a healthy state now, And looking back on your childhood, what are some things that you feel that your parents could have done differently?
Gotten along, but you can't expect people that are wounded to get along. Um, I think there was a lot of stuff that neither of my parents understood. They were very young, very young. Um, it was one of those. It was those times of, oh, you pregnant, you get married tomorrow. If you get divorced the next day, it. They didn't know a lot. You know, I do believe that my parents loved each other. I believe that my father was in love with my mom. But I believe my mom was forced. You know, she was forced to make a decision. I don't think she got the opportunity to really fall in love. Cause I mean, she was 16 years old when it began. You know, so
Okay. And I know previously you touched on your mom's drug addiction. Do you know how, could you go into the drug addiction and maybe how it started if you know?
prescription medication. And I don't think my grandparents understood drug addiction. They just all they knew was she was sick. She was sick, and that's what I would be told. Your mama's sick. You need to stay home and take care of her. Your mama's sick. The drug addiction was not the same thing back then like it is now. How it's labeled and how we know that it truly is an illness. It is. But it was just different back there. The kind of help, and even today, help is slim. So imagine it. Let's see, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, even more. It was different, you know. Um, I I have a god brother who I love so much, and for many years, well, he grew up and he went to the military and all this stuff, and for many years, we lost contact, and I saw him at a church a few years. So in the last, I want to say the last 10 years, we got back in contact, and he took me out to dinner or lunch one day, and he was literally mine and my brother's big brother. He would, when grown ups would be in the house, smoking their weed, playing cards, or doing whatever they were doing. We all lived in the projects in Dixon, which most people that come to Dixon say ain't no projects there; it's just apartments. But I remember being a little kid and him taking us to the playground, just to get us out of the environment. And I was very small, and I didn't even think about this until he and I went out to eat, and he was talking about when my mom once hemorrhaged in the bed, and I was in the bed with her, and she was hemorrhaging, and he came and he took me, and it was so much blood, and you know it's crazy how we can have memories of being so young, but when he was saying it, I was remembering it, and I was little bitty, like maybe 3 or 4. But I remember because I slept with my mom then. And when he was talking about it, it was almost like I felt it. But I was in the bed with my mom and she had begun to hemorrhage. And I don't, I believe she had a miscarriage. I'm not sure. But I remember that instant. I remember ambulance and but I don't know what actually took place. I do remember my mom cutting her wrist. So, you know, it's a lot. And many of these things, I have adult children. They have no idea. You know, the one thing that I knew when my children, I never wanted to say the words to my children that you have to stay home and take care of me. I did not ever want to do that to my children.
Okay.
I,
Being
ne-
a, oh,
I
I'm
never
sorry.
I never wanted to tell my daughter something because she's a girl. Like I wanted my daughter wash dishes. I want my son to wash dishes, and my daughter ironing. I want my sons to iron, and my daughter cooking. Even though my sons aren't great cooks, but I never wanted gender because it was drilled and instilled in me. I never wanted gender to be a reason for something.
At what age did you realize, if at all, that the things you grew up seeing impacted you as an adult?
I mean, I was always aware of what I grew up in, but I didn't think that it was different, or I didn't think that it was bad. But I do know I went into some of the same cycles. My addiction was men. That's what a family looked like to me, was a man, a woman, and the children. That's it. Nothing in between, because toxic relationships was normal looking to me. It was normal. And so it's funny because I would say I ain't never gonna have no man living with me. I would say that as a kid, and went right into it immediately because I got pregnant at 18, and me and my oldest two children's father, we had a place together. But even before that, at my mama's house, he would come and stay. I got pregnant at home. So, because my mom felt like her parents were never friends to her. So she really tried to be friends with me and my brothers. And I understood that I needed a mom. But I had a mom, but she was a friend. Like, my mom would get high with girls that I went to school with, you know. I can't hear you.
Like cocaine, getting
Crack,
on,
cocaine. My mom never used intravenous drugs. It was either pills, cocaine, or crack.
and she would do that with kids she went to school with.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't at the time that I was in school. It was after I graduated, but it was still people that I went to school with. Yep. And, my mom, one time, she offered me to get high with her. And I carried that as anger for a very long time, because my thought is, what kind of parent would ask their child? And this lady that was an addict that had been clean for many years, and she sat me down and she said, I want you to look at it differently. And I'm like, how else can you look at it? And she said, how many addicts do you know offers anybody to share their drug? And it gave me a whole different perspective. She said, this is your mom who loved you, and she was trying to share with you something that she enjoyed at that time. And that gave me, because that's true. I've seen some folks throw some blows in the alley over their little crumb, especially, where I work. But shoot, I've seen people throw blows over a cigarette. So or drink a liquor, so it gave me
Hmm.
a different perspective. It helped me, to forgive for that, you know. Um because we don't always tell somebody something, right? It might be something as simple as an outfit, and your girlfriend got on the outfit and she'd be like, how I look? You be like, girl, that's cute, and you be lying, so, but you're saying it because you care, but you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. But yeah, so that was a thing. Only once. Only one time.
Okay, so when she died, or maybe leading up to her death, what were your feelings towards her?
Well, there was more going on than we thought. We had no idea that she was as sick as she was because she was up and she was functioning. Now the behavior that she was exuding looked like addiction. It looked addictive. But in all actuality, she was going through um, brain trauma, brain damage. Um, she was being erratic. Uh, she was taking bottles. I'm talking about like lots of Tylenol.
Mm.
Was really in pain, and it wasn't until she got admitted into the hospital that we knew what was going on. But I feel like once she went into the hospital, they kept her comfortable. And I feel like the entire time she went in, once they discovered what was going on, I feel like she was at peace. Um, I remember going to see her the last day that she, well, when you went on the ICU, you heard her voice. She was singing. Every when she got put on ICU, the unit ICU, she was singing, and you could hear her as soon as you came in the door. So I remember on a Wednesday, I went to see her. And at this point, she was kind of seeing things that weren't there. When I stepped in the door, she said, "There go my baby niecey." I said, "Yeah, how you doing?" And she said, "And there behind you is my pretty girl." So her pretty girl was my daughter, but I was standing by myself. And I just was like, "Yeah, that's your pretty girl." But it's because of the brain damage that she was hallucinating. But she was talking. She knew who I was, and singing. And so that was the last day that she said anything or sung on that Wednesday.
And at that moment, she passed, or are you saying
No,
she just stopped
she
talking?
just she just stopped talking. Uh, and so that following Monday, well, that Sunday, um, my husband and I went and we spent the night at the hospital. And the next day he went to work, was on a Monday. And he was like, "Are you gonna be okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna be fine." And I spent the day with her. I crawled up in the bed with her, and I was her hair was beautiful. I didn't get her hair, but her hair was beautiful. She had it cut short, and it looked like big baby curls. And I just brushed her hair, and I said, "Mama, you don't have to stay. I have a good husband that takes good care of me, and I'm gonna be fine." I said, "You can go on," because she had started to breathe uh, fluid. Fluid was building up. And so, but her passing, her transitioning, I believe, was the way that it was supposed to be. It was beautiful. Family was there. Um, and I was at peace. At that point, I began to be truly grateful for being able to reflect back on those difficult times, because it really made me grateful to be there for her to leave that troubled life. So, but don't get me wrong, we had a lot of good times and laughter, and we would have silly moments, and so we had some good times. But the truth of the matter is, she had some struggles, and she had some moments that she was not protected, and she didn't know that she could forgive and heal. See, it turned her into a fighter.
Okay, how did you learn how to show empathy to someone that caused, because of their trauma, it caused you trauma as a child? How did you learn how to show empathy to your mother?
Because I love her. Um, I believe that love outweighs everything, combined with forgiveness. Um, I I wasn't always cool with her. I didn't always feel cool with her. I when my mom when after shortly after I got married, I had to take I'm trying to think, was I married? No, it was before I got married. I had to take my mom to a shelter and drop her off because she was getting high in the bottom bunk where my two boys were sleeping in the top bunk. I had to do those things. I was hurt, angry, but it never wavered my love for her. I think that I truly started to begin to understand addiction, but I also know I'm obligated to my children. I have to take care of them because there are some means that I wasn't taken care of. I was exposed to hearing sex noises through the walls. And my mama's it wasn't my mom, but we would have a cousin who would stay with us and he would bring his girl. Like I was exposed to a lot. And guess what? I turned around and exposed my kids to the very same things that I used to be in my room like this. So I don't pass judgment. I do not pass judgment on either one of my parents because I know my parents went through some things that I didn't go through. Don't get me wrong, I've gone through some things too. But then also been aware that there's other young women and other young men who have gone through so much more than me. So much more than me. Um, I feel my mom's pain. Again, she wasn't protected. She did try to protect me. She did. She would fight the devil for me, you know. But it was so many things that she didn't know that was there, and there's so many things that I do know. I have been around a different group of people that my mom was around. I'm around so many strong women and men that pour into me, that have put their arms around me, who have listened to me and been empathetic for me. So I'm not perfect. And sometimes I get pissed off because she's not here, because she made some decisions that changed the trajectory of her life. Sometimes I do get upset because I I miss her because I have a 16-year-old that can't make his own memories with her. I have 7 grandchildren that can't make their own memories with her. But when I miss her really, really bad, I just sit back and have a conversation with her. But I also have asked her to forgive me for moments when I was disrespectful. I shouldn't have been having sex in my mama's house. Even though it was pretty normal, I still should not have, just out of respect for her. But I did. So, we're not all perfect. Not by a long shot. But if I can assist people, assist people in loving themselves first, respecting themselves and forgiving themselves first, then that creates healthier relationships with other people. You know, I'm a mother of a daughter too, and it's not always easy. It's not always been healthy, but you learn as you go. When I became a mama, I didn't know nothing about being a mama. Even though I took care of this person, I babysat this, that, and that. There's all these books that give you advice, and you can get some good advice from it. But there's no book. There's no one book that applies to any mother or any father or any parents together. You got to feel your way through it.
Mhm. Okay, what advice would you give? Because we talked about empathy, but let's talk about forgiveness. There was a big thing you said about, you've forgave your mom and you hope she forgave you. There are a lot of people that hold on to resentment and anger, and maybe their parents got better, maybe not, but they're still holding on, and they're allowing things to build up, and then sometimes we let out on people because of all the internal anger. If somebody said, I want to forgive my parent for what they did to me, how do I start? What would you say to that
But
person?
before you can forgive, you got to release resentment. You can't have forgiveness over here and hold resentment over here. It doesn't work. Um, I'm big on writing letters. I believe we are a people that we have rotating thoughts, but if we don't put any action but beside it or with it, then it continues to be rotating thoughts. And I have to say, shout out to my pastor, Rev Jeff Carr, because we've known each other for years and years and years. And I've had conversations with him in regards to my mom, in regards to my dad, in regards to my children. And I would be in there and I would just be spewing stuff out, spewing stuff out. And I'd be like, and I don't understand this and this. And he would let me get it all out. And he would sit back in his seat and he would say, so how's that working out for you? So when you spew out the resentment that you have, being resentful and being honest about your feelings are two different things because the energy that you have attached to it. That resentment is going to carry some anger. And I'm not even saying that it's not true. But sometimes you got to work in levels. Sometimes you got to work through that anger to be able to calm it down. And again, to me, writing is one of the best things. It's not about writing a letter to somebody else, but it's getting all the stuff that you've harbored and festered in your stomach out, getting it down, anything it is, folding it up and burning it and watching the release. Does that make you feel better instantly? No. But when you really want to change, you got to, let me go back. You have to want to change it first. That's first. Before the assignment, that's first. You have to make the decision that this is something that you want to change. And once you decide to change it and you take the steps to change it, you can't go back and pick it up. Because when you do that, that makes it null and void. Anything that you do, it'll make it null and void. So you got to make the decision first. You've got to have the awareness that it's resentment. Because guess what? Sometimes when people be mad and hurt and stuff, they don't even know. They don't even know. It just, it's like regurgitation. It just explodes out. It might not even, somebody might not even be saying nothing to cause that impact, but it's spinning in your cycle, in your circle. It's just, and what goes down is gonna come up. You keep swallowing, it's gonna come out. So the awareness of something is wrong, something is hurting you, then the decision that you want to change it. Nobody can change it for you, because if somebody has done wrong to you, and even if they apologize, if you're not willing to forgive it, to be aware of how it's affecting you and forgive it, guess what? Ain't gonna do no good. Ain't gonna do no good.
What advice would you give to people who are trauma bonding over this a similar hurt? Let's say I have a family member or I have a mother who has hurt me, and then we connect on that, but we haven't worked on the healing. We have that similarity for each other. What advice would you give to people who are wanting to create a bond with somebody just based on a general dislike for somebody, maybe a family member or a friend or things like that?
So is the trauma between the two people?
So they're bonding. So basically, trauma bonding. Basically, my dad did me wrong. My dad did me wrong, and now we that commonality brings
And
us
so we compete over who daddy was the
not
worst.
even competing, but we're friends based
Yeah.
on that. Oh, my mama did me wrong too. My mama love. What advice would you give to those type of people or those people within those type of situations?
I can't give those people advice because they have to make the decision. If they You only change things that you want to change. You know, and if that's a bond that's so strong, they're not going to hear me or anybody else for that matter, because they've got so much energy that's attached to it. It feels good to have an understanding ear to know what I'm talking about. That's what it might start off at, but then it starts talking about incident after every, and then that's when resentment sets in. Now, if you bond with somebody through empathy and understanding, I can understand that. So, but if until somebody says, I want to change the dynamics of this, then they wouldn't hear, not just me, but they wouldn't hear anybody other than that person that's personifying this. I've been hurt, this toxic relationship, this, that. And think about it. Even with relationships, look how long some people go from one toxic relationship to the next toxic relationship to the next one, because it's familiar and it's comfortable. Even it's chaotic and messy. And so many times people be like, I don't be dealing in no mess, and they in the middle of the mess because it's familiar and it's comfortable. So they give each other comfort because it's familiar and they understand it. So until somebody is ready to change the dynamics, in my opinion, I don't think that they would really hear you. But sometimes you have to say these things to get it out. Again, like I'm saying, you have to say it, write it to at least get it off of you to start. But if you do that with an intention in mind, I hear you. But if you connecting and you is banging with somebody else, I just don't think that the words would be heard.
Okay, so many people, not just, towards their mother, but so many people harbor hate and resentment towards family members. And that causes some people to not even want to be around their family, whether it be a big or small situation. How would a person address situations like that in a healthy way? Like, let's say I have an issue with a family member, but I'm wanting to work towards us building a bond. How would I handle that in a healthy way, or what would you do
I
in a
really
situation?
believe, I believe because I watched this all my life. I believe it depends on the situation. Again, like I said, my mom was raped by her brother-in-law. Um, and it happened, and it was brushed off like that was years ago, or what go on in this house stays in this house, that type of situation. So I really believe that it depends on the circumstance. Sometime in order to protect yourself, you have to remove yourself from certain instances. So that's kind of difficult to answer, because I believe what type of circumstance plays a part in it. Now, if it's something about she owe me $50 and you something like that, not saying that that's just minor, but there's a difference, because you might need them $50 that you let somebody borrow. In a situation like that, I would say, attempt a side conversation with nobody around, because sometimes when somebody else is around, then it can be blown up into something else. Attempt to communicate about it. If that does not work, then you have to make the decision if it's weighing that much on you to where you need to separate from your family, or if you just brush it off as, hey, I was a blessing to somebody and I move on. We will not always get along with family. That is the reality. We don't get to pick our family members, but doesn't mean, because we are relatives, that we always got to be in each other's face. You can love people from a distance, but it just depends on what that person needs to do for themselves.
Okay, thank you, do over coach. I don't have any more questions, but would you like to add anything else to the conversation, or anything you didn't mention that you want to mention before we wrap things up?
I thank you, Shamika. You're absolutely amazing, and I love having conversations with you. Um, I just, we need to consider the other people as well, and just be grateful for situations, and always pull something that you can learn, no matter what the situation is. Pull something you can learn and apply it to yourself, because it's only one person. I don't care if you got 15 kids, I don't care if you got 13 brothers and sisters. It's only one person that you have control of, and that's yourself. So always do something where you learn a lesson that can contribute to you being better tomorrow than you were today.
Awesome. And how can the people get in contact with you?
You can reach out to me on my Facebook page. It is Denise Edmondson Knowles on Facebook.
Doctor.
Dr. Denise Edmondson Knowles. That's my personal Facebook page. Also, you can go to my page, Do Over Coach Denise on Facebook. Same thing on Instagram. Uh, Dr. D knows on Instagram. But just you reach out to me on my inbox on Facebook, and we can connect. If you need to reach me by phone, give me a call at 629-333-9947. Email address the over coach COACH @gmail.com.
All right. Thank you, Denise. Say bye.
Bye, Shamika.